Hello, hello. I'm waiting for my lovely
Ah,
colleagues
okay.
to join us. Oh, there they are. Here we are. Here we are. Welcome to the 2023 Women Future Conference. This is going to be an amazing dialogue. We're excited to have you join us. So as we are teeing things up, let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. If you just click the chat at the bottom, let us know where you're joining from, and we can just say hello to you and we can give you a warm welcome. And so we're just going to give it maybe like 30 seconds for our amazing other participants to join us. And my ring light has magically appeared. That's great when you have good team in the background where they hear you and they run in to get your ring light going, right? Listen. Oh, welcome, welcome. Where are we just? Chicago, yes. So, and let me say where I'm actually in Delaware right now, but I'm going to put in here where I actually reside. San Diego, California. Yes.
Where the weather is always perfect. Oh,
yeah. I concur. I concur. So let's begin. Let's begin. I see we have 8 amazing participants with us right now, but as we know, it's just going to keep going, and people are going to be joining. So we want to get started because time will move very swiftly. So today I'd like to take a moment to introduce the amazing women and just dynamicness that is on this conversation today. And I have the privilege of not just being able to call these ladies colleagues, but also friends. So you are joining us for a candid conversation on workplace inclusivity for women in business. And, you know, when we were dialoguing, there are so many things that we as women, as we are taking our place, right? We're creating tables, we're flipping tables, we are taking the head at tables. There are some things that we felt compelled to have a different dialogue around because sometimes these things are not talked about freely. So with that, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to introduce Farah Harris, you see here, and you see Chelsea C. Williams. So Farah is going to take a moment to tell us a little bit about herself, and then Chelsea will then take the reins, and then I'll bring us home, and we will start the dialogue. So Farah, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. So excited to be here. I'm Farah Harris. I am a licensed psychotherapist, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Working Well Daily, which is a company that's dedicated to disrupting unhealthy work environments by elevating the EQ of not just leaders, but teams. And so there's more that I could say, but I don't want to take the floor the entire time because Chelsea is also equally amazing. So I'm going to pass it on to my dear Chelsea.
Amazing. So happy to be here. We're excited to dialogue on an important topic. My name is Chelsea Williams. I'm the founder and CEO of Reimagine Talent. We are a national workforce and talent development firm supporting the next generation workforce and employers who desire to build connected, empowered workplaces of belonging. I am based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and super excited today to bring a generational angle to this conversation.
Yes, which is very much needed. And my name, I am Alicia Houston. I am the moderator of this panel today. And so first, I'm going to encourage you, if any questions, any insights, anything arises for you, please utilize the Q&A, and so we can make sure that if the chat gets going, sometimes you can miss questions. So I don't want to miss anything. So please feel free to utilize that Q&A dialogue box at the bottom there. And it is just such a pleasure to be here. I am the founder and CEO of the Culture Crew, and that's Crew, C-R-U. And we are a company that supports Fortune 500s or Fortune 100s, nonprofits, small and medium-sized businesses in creating a culture of psychological safety and actual ownership. And we do this by looking at 3 crucial areas. We look at those that deal with multi-generational workforces. We look at those, we support those that have a neurodivergent workforce, and we also support companies with having a dialogue around elder care responsibilities. So with that, let's get started. So I am going to start with you first, Farah. So we as women, there are some things that are just inevitable that we are going to go through in our lifetime, right? And
Yes.
those three things could, for sure, will be menses, right? We're going to have menses. We are going to experience menopause, and we could possibly experience a miscarriage.
Yes.
And so I was reading an article, and it was talking about how 60% of women in the workplace have not felt supported when dealing with one of these or all of these things, and they felt that the door has been closed. So you deal with helping organizations deal with psychological safety, remove overwhelm and burnout. How does this play a role in that dialogue, Farah?
Oh, it's so important. As a clinician, when we talk about mental health, we really are talking about life, right? The things that we experience within life. And so as a woman, from childhood until adulthood, we've gone through these different changes in our bodies that impact how we show up, and so some of us experience, painful menses, some of us may experience a miscarriage, and many of us are going to experience menopause that have some type of adverse effects. Bless the women who go through it with nothing, but for the rest of us who may experience the hot flashes, the fogginess, and I am neurodivergent, so definitely how our cycle can impact how our brains function during that time of the month. It is going to show up on our productivity. It's going to show up on how safe we feel to share our discomfort. It's always been taboo, and there's still a stigma around mental health, but because we don't fully understand that mental health, as I said, is life, then these other things that we experience in life are also stigmatized. So we don't talk about the changes. I remember working with one organization, and a woman had entered menopause, but prior to that, when she was perimenopausal, she didn't know what was going on. She thought she was going crazy. And it wasn't until she talked to other women who were like, oh, those are just symptoms of menopause. And she's like, nobody told me. So I think it's very isolating for us, for something that is so natural that we women go through. Maybe not every single one of us, but we've all have at least experienced one of those three and all the stuff in between. Yet we don't talk about it. And we suffer in silence, and our organizations aren't having a safe space for us to talk about the rest that we may need, removing deadlines or getting support that we may need during certain times of the month. Many women are leaving the workplace prematurely because of menopause. So right when they're, technically free out of their childbearing years, they may be empty nesters. And this is the time that you would love to be elevated, and you go, I don't even feel like my best self. And so their workplace isn't supporting women during those seasons. So women feel like the option is to opt out, and we're losing brilliance and human capital because of the lack of support for women for the natural things that our bodies experience.
You are so right. And it's really interesting, Farah, as you were talking about that, I was recalling a female executive that I was supporting, I'll say a few years ago, and she was experiencing just what you were saying. She was having a lot of brain fog. She was not, her recollection was not as swift. And it was, and she had to do her own research on why was this happening? And even bringing that to the forefront with her leadership, where her direct supervisor was a woman. She was unfortunately gaslighted. She was shut down. She was not believed. And she eventually ended up leaving that position. And it is a very well-known company. And so I'm very happy to be having this dialogue today, because there are a lot of myths, I will say, when it comes to moving into this part of life, and these dialogues that need to happen, and organizations that actually have a responsibility, because they want to employ people. As you employ people, we have a responsibility to those people, correct?
Amen.
Please, anyone who is watching, please feel free to put your insights in chat or your own experiences. We'd love to bring that into the conversation so we can have a very interactive dialogue. And Chelsea, I want to go to you because we're here, your expertise, and you are just so beautiful in addressing these multi-generational components of the workforce. And as we're talking about multi-generations, you know, we can be women. So I am 50 this year. And so there are things that I am experiencing, thank you, that I'm a Gen Xer, right? And so there are things that I'm experiencing that, you know, my counterparts may not experience, they may not understand, because these days, even some of us in the workplace or in different arenas we may report to someone who's actually younger than us. And so, you know, I'd love your thoughts on how you're seeing things like this possibly play out in the workplace with the companies that you support.
Yes, it's such a juicy conversation. And I think we have a generational panel today too.
Yes, we do.
I am a millennial, so I love that we get a chance to have this conversation together. I like to set context and tone on this conversation of generations because there's still a lot of misinformation. So for one, we have 5 generations in the workforce and workplace today. That's right. Because of the pandemic, we actually have people who have stayed in the workplace longer. So we have traditionalists, we have boomers, we have Gen X, Gen Y, also known as millennials, and then Gen Z, who are coming in very hot. So I do like to start there because we still have people calling Gen Zers millennials, and that's not the case. And so we need to understand we've got 5 generations in the workplace. Some things I want us to also understand: generational representation is starting to be younger in the workforce. So we're seeing more millennials and Gen Zers who are even stepping into leadership roles. Okay, so those are some things we want to understand. By 2030, 30% of the workforce will be Gen Z. So the shift is coming, and I would argue today that workplaces are not addressing it. They're not considering policies, programs, and practices and how they need to shift and evolve for a current time. And I'll add a final piece that I think we're missing, and it is around the economic impact and the wealth transfer that's taking place as we speak. Many are not aware that we are having a wealth transfer as boomers prepare for retirement. Some Gen Xers decide to retire. We're having millennials and Gen Zers over time, over the next few years, there will be a wealth transfer. Now, of course, there's an equity conversation to that, but in general, brands and businesses and companies should also be thinking about this because it's going to have an impact on our products and our services and who consumes them and how. So I start by just saying the generational conversation certainly is a manager and leadership conversation around how do I need to flex my style? How do I need to offer feedback in different ways? How do I need to broaden communication? But we're all here as women in business. And I would say that we also should be mindful of how generational shifts are going to impact the work that we do. Something I think that is really important to notice, because we are talking women to women here, is that we need to retire some language that we've been using. An example would be back in my day, when I first started out, because the truth is it's not the same today. Simply the last 3 years alone have felt like a decade. And so I do think, and this will be my point, when we talk about managing and leading people today, we do have to understand how values, styles, ideals, vision around career and life, to Farah's point about the experience of being women and choosing childbirth or not, it's different. And so to manage and lead well, we need to know our people. We need to understand the differences in values that are coming to the table. And we need to avoid that our way was the only way. I'll end there.
Or our way was the right way.
The right way. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And you know, I appreciate the level set on the conversation, right? About what does that even mean, so that we can all be speaking from the same conversation. And you just actually demonstrated how important it was to bring everyone along right? To bring them along in the dialogue, to make sure, let me help you understand where I'm starting from. So maybe, like you said, maybe it's not back in my day, like I know my mom used to tell me. She used to say, back in my day, I'm like, oh, here we go. Because that's what happens, right? Then the brain switches to, let me put I'm done because we're going to go into story time. And this is not relevant to me. So really bringing people along, helping them see in a manner that, yes, yours, what you used to do or how you used to do it, there was value in it in that moment. But how about now we have a different conversation? How about I say, you know what? So yes, there was a way that we used to do it, but let me sit down, Chelsea. Let me sit down, Farah, and hear what you have to say, because what you are experiencing also matters. It also has value. And so we have to, yes, we have to be so careful about that languaging. And I know I have to be careful too. I have to be careful. I have to catch. Yes, Farah, go ahead.
I was just saying, because I used the back in the day, but I think there's two ways that we can even use that. You know, there's the way that Chelsea explained where it could be very off-putting, you know, like the mom, like, here's story time, you know, I had to walk 15 miles to school, you know, but what about if using it as an antidote? Like back in our day, we did this. But I don't think we did that right. To your point, Chelsea, the decade, I was like, what is time in a pandemic? Like it was 3 years, but it seems like forever. And we are looking at the future of work. The workplace landscape has completely changed, and it was done so abruptly. And we have to have, hey, this is how we used to do it. And did that work well for our people? And where are we going? And will that work well for our people? And I think what stood out to me, Chelsea, was your numbers and highlighting that we may soon have many leaders who are younger than us. And what does that mean in terms of the safety of the dialogue about the changes, not just changes in the women getting into perimenopause and menopause, but I'm even thinking about those childbearing years where back in the day, you know, you had kids when you were 25, like you got married and you had kids. And this generation is changing the time frame where they're waiting a little bit later to have children. What does that look like? You know, and the emotional changes that goes through, that women go through. Like I've worked with clients who've had to have hysterectomies, and the grieving process that goes to that, even if they made the decision, like our family's complete, but wow, like it's complete, like, and giving space for them to be able to show up well at work when they're going through all those different transitions. And so I'm hoping that the younger generation makes it more safe and more of an everyday conversation about what's going on in their women bodies, what's happening in their women lives, so that we don't have women who feel shame and who are suffering in silence. Because the way back in our day, we don't talk about, you know, periods at work. We don't talk about X, Y, and Z. But now, today, you know, like yesterday's price, it's not today's. Yesterday's conversation is not today's conversation. Yesterday's policies are not today's policies. And we really need to improve our workplace policies around women and the things and experiences that we as women go through.
And I'm going to jump on that. I'm going to ask both of you ladies this, because you said the magic P word, policies, right? Policies and procedures, and just about amending, updating. And so, you know, there are things that have been in place. Because we want to actually give some tactics. We want to make things actionable from this dialogue. I'm going to ask you first, Chelsea, and then I'm going to go to you, Farah. How do we support companies in this dialogue? How do we support women? Because we're here to talk about women. How do we have women support other women, women support championing these new policies, these new procedures, these new ways, right, of thinking, being, acting, and demonstrating, so it's not emblematic. So how do we do this, Chelsea? How are you seeing this done, and how are you really helping your clients navigate this landscape?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think using policies as the example, listen, there's levels to policy. There's organizational policy broadly. There's sometimes my function and my team policies, because every role is not the same. We're seeing that from a hybrid work standpoint. Some folks have never had an opportunity to be hybrid. So I just start by saying, like, policies is organizational, team focused, and then individual. What I would say the first is you have to know the policies that exist, right? There are still so many people who don't know and understand the policies that have been set. So we have to kind of go back to the basics and make sure we're aware and understanding of what is currently the policy today. There is an important part of us in this conversation around women, I believe, knowing your people enough to know where a policy may not be serving them well today. And that is the piece that sometimes can be challenging, because here's the policy that has historically existed in supporting, personal responsibilities and needs, role-specific needs, and then being able to be the manager or leader who voices to executive team, to HR, to head of benefits. You know what? I think it's time that we sit and evolve the policies. Here's what I'm hearing from my team. Are you hearing this from other teams? Here's some resources that we know are beneficial and really challenging. I think there's a role, like as a bridge and manager as coach, that we should be challenging what has historically been in place in a healthy way, of course. But I do think that that's really important, because I honestly believe we are going to see a need to evolve policies now as a part of just doing work in business, the way things are starting to just change at the rapid speed that's coming. And so knowing is first. I need to know what is around me. And then second, I need to be in touch and proximate enough to my people where they can tell me what they're going through, and I could audit and evaluate what's currently available and say, they don't have what they need to be successful here. And so I have to vocalize that to the powers that be. And then at the same time, because sometimes policies take a long time to implement, that's the reality, do what I can do to style, flex, and support them where they are. So that's a few things that come up for me.
Oh, very powerful. So I want you all to hear that. And I was writing notes so I could reiterate this, right? It's knowing your people enough. And Chelsea, that just really hit me in my gut, because a lot of times, as it did you too, Farah, I see that as, there are a lot of people who have one foot in, but the other foot out, one ear in, but the other one is listening to something else. And so really taking stock in your people, really creating a relationship that you can advocate and you can actually see what is required. I love that. And then remaining in touch, like you've got to be in touch. Like, wow, Chelsea, that is so real. You've got to be in touch. Thank you for that. Because I think sometimes we miss those things. They sound, for lack of a better term, so basic, but they are those things are what change organizations, Chelsea. Those create spaces of loyalty. Those create spaces that you see me and you feel me. And I want to be a part of this team. Thank you, Chelsea. Farah, I'm going to defer to you.
Yeah, I was heads down too. Sorry, I'm like turning away because I'm writing notes. I was like, "Ooh, Chelsea, okay, that's good." So that line of know your people really resonated with me. So I also come from a church culture. And so I have this belief that, you can't be a shepherd and not smell like sheep. And so if you're going to be a leader, you need to know and be close enough to your people to know what it is that they need and how you can best support them. And so, with policy that can, sometimes take time, not only for women to know the policies, but to also know your rights. Right. And so the issues that we have around the pain that we suffer, whether it's because of endometriosis, whether it's because we've had a miscarriage, whether it's because of just general menses and menopause, taking time off, that flexibility, right? Knowing that you can actually request disability. Even though, yes, it's not necessarily that you are now a disabled person, but it impacts your day-to-day work. And so really being able to know what your rights are are so important. And another note that I want to share is that, you know, as we were thinking about policies, this is the importance of what people don't want to talk about when we discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion. The people that are going to be impacted by our policies need to be also present at the table creating the policies. You know, so quick story, I was working with the law firm and partnered with them. And I remember a couple of the employees were like, you need to come to the new office fire. We got it redone. It's amazing. And I was hesitant. And it was interesting, after I had one of my office hours with the employees, my hesitation was founded by their feedback, because something told me, I don't know if it's truly a accessible workplace. And so sure enough, I had an employee during office hours was like, so I have some concerns, you know, I don't know, I know one entrance is accessible, but I'm not sure about the other entrances, not just for the employees, but the clients that they served, right?
Yes.
And then there was the situation where they created I guess a nursing room for moms who were, not a nursing room, but like a pumping room.
Right.
So for moms who were coming back to work and needed a pump for their kids. And did I forget to mention it was all glass? Like it was an open space, all glass. And lawyers are just a different breed. And so
yes.
there's right, but there is a need to make sure that you got your billable hours, right? So here you have women who are very driven, very maybe type A personality. So this is not a break for them to be pumping, right? They don't want to feel like they're a cow. Like, I'm only here to pump milk. I want to make sure I have billable hours. And there was no space in that room for them to actually, like, you know, have a port where they can do work. And so I said, you know, did they have anybody on the team to discuss when they were creating the, you know, interior design, what would work best for the female attorneys that are here? So I think what's so important is that when we're creating or desiring places of belonging, we need to make sure that the people at the table who are creating those policies are also people who represent those that we're serving within the workplace and our customers.
Yes, Farah. Oh, that is so real. That is so real. The right people need to have the voice at the table, right? And sometimes that's overlooked. I recall my dad suffers from vascular dementia, and we were looking for a care facility for him. And the care facility that we had decided on, they were having an interior. It's so funny you're talking about designing. The design was being upgraded, and they were bringing in new art pieces. And so we're walking through and they're showing us all this art. And we said, there is not one person of color in this art. First, they were mortified, right? They were mortified, but that's what happens. You miss it because it's not your lens. And we don't have to shame people around it, but we do have a responsibility to bring some things to the forefront, to bring the attention to something that may have been missed. So I believe that is right along your point with glass walls for a pumping room. No privacy. Yes, Chelsea. Yes. Oops. So making sure that we have the right people at the table and that we're able to have very candid conversations, because some of these things can be considered taboo. And so I'm very grateful that we're here today talking about these things. And I want to ask you ladies as well. Chelsea, I want to begin with you because you're just this multi-generational workforce, this multi-generational passing on of information and sharing of information. And I think one thing that has been very instrumental for me in my path to growing my leadership and expanding my level of emotional intelligence and taking ownership of who I am has been having the right mentors, has been having sponsors that have put my name in rooms that I was not able to be in, and has allowed for different conversations to take place, right? For me to be able to see things that I probably would not have been able to see. And quite honestly, we're here to have a very real transparent conversation. The women really were challenging for me. In some of that, I had a lot of wonderful males that were championing for me. And to be very clear, I had a lot of white males that were championing for me. But sometimes the women, it almost felt like there was a tug and a pull and a tug and a pull, but there was not a let me lift as I lead. I'd like to know, have you ladies experience that? And Chelsea, especially from you as a multi-generational workforce, how are you seeing this play out?
I mean, this is a juicy one, and honestly could be its own panel. There's a few things that come up in this conversation. For one, unfortunately, there's still a crabs in the barrel mentality through many intersections, certainly gender-based. And then when you add on, as one example, race, ethnicity, sexuality, it can get heightened. Yeah. I think one thing we have to understand, I want to kind of first start with mentorship in general. There are still too many people who see mentorship only as one thing. And that thought that mentorship is only one thing, and the need to put everything on my mentor to help support me with, can be a challenge in a space and place where, transparently, if we think about what mentoring means, it's providing information, resources, being a sounding board, etc. And so I do think, especially when we talk about early career professionals, if you ask most of them, we do a lot of work with students who are in college or who are graduated, they do believe the mentor is like their holy savior. And is the person who's going to help them with everything they're dealing and navigating through and with. And so I do think, again, manager as coach, leader as coach, we have to demystify what mentoring means today. We have to let people know that when I give you feedback at the end of a presentation, when I pull you aside to let you know how that client pitch went, that's all an opportunity through feedback for you to be mentored. When I send you, go read Farah's book, plug for Farah's book, that is me saying, that is mentor happening. So I think first, before we talk about the intricacies of women, I would start by, let's demystify mentoring and what it means today, because unfortunately, some people can think it's too much that's going to be expected of me. And so I'm going to tap out altogether. So that's part A. To your point about women and the challenge in workplaces, there are too many conferences or events I go to where people have high expectations that women are going to be the ones to support them simply because of there's a shared affinity or identity, and they are disappointed to figure out that that is not the case. I think we've got to manage expectations, first of all, as individuals, about who we're going to be getting support from. And I think it's the best thing to do to keep you on your North Star of where you want to go with your career. Now, I do think for women who are leading today, we do have to look in the mirror. We have to look in the mirror and face the reasons why we don't want to see another woman across generations get to her next level. We have to take a moment to consider, am I helping certain women? There are far too many LinkedIn posts I've been seeing lately that have been talking about women at work. And they're talking about a certain identity of women at work, because if there was an understanding of some of the challenges that exist, women of color as one lane, their actual findings around women and how they're perceived and the language being used would actually be a little bit different. And so we have to stop categorizing women as having the same experiences at work. And to Farah's point, and I'm wrapping up so she can speak, and to Farah's point, really getting to know, are people A and the disparities that exist at the intersection B? Wow. Because there are far too many women who are saying, we're not getting X, we're not getting Y, but they're talking really about who they are. They're not actually being honest and transparent about some of the challenges that exist when we add other dimensions of diversity to the conversation. So I know that was a loaded answer, but those are some of the things we have to understand. Demystify mentorship, be someone who helps to guide in career development and really ask ourselves, what role can I play and who am I supporting? And then be willing to really ask yourself, how am I showing up? And what is the roadblock for me of why I choose to or not choose to support women?
Yes.
And then get therapy. And then get therapy if there's something there. That's my final point. So
yes, thank you. And Farah, I see you
collection plate.
Go.
Where is the collection plate? Oh, Chelsea, you said it all. I wanted to jump in like in the screen and grab you and be like, yes. And you ended exactly where I wanted to start. You ended with, to go seek therapy. What is the trauma, the workplace trauma that you possibly could have as a female leader that has stopped you, that's the barrier for you showing up for another woman? And I don't think that we've done the work, because, going back to back in my day, we have that issue, but then we also have the, I hate to say this, but, well, my mama whooped me and I turned out okay. And it was like, okay, so why is that now an excuse for you to harm your child? And so I feel like some of us, because we've experienced certain traumas and have not healed from those traumas within the workplace, being the only, so, and then you got the intersectionality that comes with it. If you are a Black woman in the workplace or another, part of the global majority group, and then you see somebody else and you go, it took so long for me to just get here. And now I'm afraid it's a scarcity mindset too, right? I'm afraid that there's not enough room at the table. This organization has been clear, and sometimes it's not. I don't put the onus all on the woman that is gatekeeping. So sometimes I'm seeing evidence that they don't allow more than one to pass through, the eye of the needle. So I have to protect my coins. So therefore, I'm going to not be as transparent. I'm not going to be as charitable, because I don't want you to take my seat, especially if it's a person that's younger. So I'm always like, if you're going to be in a leadership role, please go to therapy, be on somebody's couch. Because if it's not just the workplace trauma, you have your own personal traumas from whatever happened when you grew up. I loved how you said EQ, Alicia, because that's my jam too.
Yes,
so
it is.
Doing that EQ work of asking yourself, am I aware of how I'm feeling? How's it impacting the way that I'm showing up? How am I landing on other people? And to your point, Chelsea, back to the belonging and psych safety piece, the question is, who's able to be safe with you and who's not? So why is it that it's this group that seems to be able to be elevated, that I'm encouraging, that I'm making space and time for them? And yet there's this other group that it seems like it's almost like pulling teeth for me to give them attention. And that takes work. No one likes to feel like they're the bad guy. No one wants to feel like they're a bad leader. But that self-awareness piece, you can't do it without feedback. And feedback is like the 4-letter, cuss word for some folk. But letting someone go, yeah, you're not always, easy to talk to, or you're not always available, like what is the data showing, if you're a workplace that is, doing surveys around, the employee experience, what's the trend that's going on with you, that highlights that you haven't created safety for all of the members of your team, or equitable safety, I should say, for every member of your team.
Chelsea.
Yeah, Farah, beautifully put. I love it all. The only other thing I'll add, as you and Alicia were speaking, is around confirmation bias, and how there are times where we have had a negative experience with a person who doesn't look like us. And sometimes they did us wrong, or there was a misinterpretation, and we hold on to that one experience that may have happened. I'm a Black woman. I was harmed by a white woman. All white women are X. all
Oh,
Hispanic.
come on. Let's speak truth.
I just have to say it.
Yes.
Tell the truth.
It's often happening unconsciously, but then it becomes conscious because we don't address it, to Farah's point.
Mm,
So we
Chelsea,
have to check ourselves for that.
come on. See,
100%.
we're here to speak truth to power. We're not here to sugarcoat. We're here to bring real conversation. And this requires us to take a look at ourselves, as Farah said, emotional intelligence. And I'm going to let Farah deal, comment on Nina's post.
Because
this is what it means, right? To just have a dialogue and to understand that we all share this table, but we're here for a purpose. So Farah, please, yes, take it.
I'm so glad that you shared this, Nina. This is such a good example of, and we kind of touched on it, but it was in the back of my mind about the expectations we put on others due to how we view things, right? So when I do leadership training, I'm always asking, what's your work narrative? You know, what does work ethic mean for you? Because your definition of work ethic is different from somebody else's. So in this situation where Nina says that you were expected to be available during your personal family time between 6 to 9 p.m. because this other, woman manager was at a different time zone. And she's the fact that I didn't have children, child, at the time, and she did as a reason to take advantage of my time. Okay, this is a person that already struggles with boundaries, right? It's just straight up disrespectful top down. But this is the part that I wrestle with workplaces where there's this, these unspoken rules and these unspoken policies about people's time. When I think about, and it's a video that kind of resurfaces time and time again on social media, where there's that conversation with Oprah, where she was asking for pay equity. And, she was getting paid like $22,000 and her, co-host was making 50. And when she asked for 50, they're like, you don't have kids. You don't have a family. Why do you deserve just as much as he does? And she's like, because we're doing the same job. And so it's in these organizations and with these leaders and with our colleagues that we have to make sure that there's I'm not glad you said this, Chelsea, where, there's the organization, but we also have these like micro organizations, within our team, there's this culture within the team that we have to be clear, like, okay, maybe I work in an organization that may not necessarily be psychologically safe as a whole, but is my team psychologically safe? Is my leader psychologically safe? Are the colleagues that I work with respectful, regardless of time zone, regardless of family status? So it is so heartbreaking that we still have this very selfish mindset that because I view you, in a way, she viewed you as less than. Because I view you as less than, I can therefore cross your boundaries for whatever it is that I want. It's very selfish and, very low on the EQ scale.
Yes, agreed. And I love that you brought in the boundaries component. Because I think sometimes I can speak for myself as a woman. There was a time that I wore that as a badge of honor. Oh, I'm sending this email at 10 p.m. I'm working because I realized that there was a level of proving and worthiness that I was dealing with internally as a woman in the workplace, as one of the only, in many ways, on that particular team. And being very young and moving into leadership, I just felt I needed to prove myself. And so we have to be very careful as we start to allow people to cross what I call the red velvet rope, right? Because, if you remember, so back in my day, when we used to go to the club, we being transparent, we had that red velvet rope and security had to open that rope. Now it was very soft, it was very beautiful, but you could not pass unless security opened that red velvet rope. And so I did not have my rope secured. It was just always open for anyone because my level of EQ was being established, but it had not been established yet. So I'm very grateful that we're talking about this, Farah, that we're talking about this level of boundaries, that Nina brought this up, that Chelsea brought up just this, how we can take one person's actions and make it a whole group. We can then compartmentalize and have biases towards a whole group. But I encourage everyone listening to just envision that red velvet rope as we are walking in boundaries, as we're creating boundaries, as there's something even new for some of us, as it is uncomfortable, because those boundaries in many ways, whether it's personal or professional, will really protect you, and it will give you that opportunity to take some real ownership of who you are, and a deeper understanding, Farah, that, you know what, maybe I do need some therapy here. Chelsea, as you were saying, maybe I do need some support with my biases and with how I don't want to now engage with a particular type of people because of what was done to me. And so, yeah, Chelsea, I'd love for you to just chat a little bit about how women today in the workplace, how are you helping some of these organizations that you are affiliated with? How are you helping them? Because we've all said it, policies can take time, new procedures, getting buy-in can take time. How are you helping the teams? Because we talked about the ecosystem, right? Within a larger organization, how are you supporting some of these women who are looking to move into leadership? How are you supporting them with getting the resources that they need if they do run into some roadblocks with other women or with other people in general that they're uncomfortable with?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I mean, I think the first one is, if we're talking straight career development for women today, I think it's a lot of what you mentioned. We need not miss an opportunity because we're looking for someone who looks like us, thinks like us, has had the same experience as us. So I think it would behoove us to make sure that our board of career advisors is diverse, is expansive, is values aligned. Like, actually, we should be focused on values alignment more than how someone looks. So that's kind of that's where I would start. I would start in that category. I think B, some of us haven't really addressed how the game has changed and is changing.
Yeah.
And and when I say game, I mean the corporate game. Even in the last few years, again, with expectations around work, where we work, how we work, values of work, industry shifts and stuff, we have to sit down and really ask ourselves, are the actions, mindsets, and behaviors that I have been demonstrating, going to work in this current environment and beyond? Where do I have challenges? Where might blind spots exist? I am a firm believer, and I'll end here thinking about Farah's point. I'm a firm believer that I waited too long in my Wall Street days to seek out a career and business coach. I think especially for women, particularly for women of color, to have a person who can be there for you to advise you on how you're navigating your career roadmap, who's unbiased, by the way. They could tell you you're doing it all great, or they could tell you, you know what, you perceived it to be X. I don't think that's what it was. And to stop you in your tracks so that you don't derail your advancement, that would have been golden. And so now I'm a firm proponent, even with some of these early career women coming up, get yourself a part of communities, get yourself going to professional association events, seek out coaching programs so that you will be far ahead of where many others were, simply because you're using resources that have nothing to do but help you get ahead.
Wow. Wow, Chelsea. That was absolutely phenomenal insight. And I say feedback is fuel, right? Feedback will propel you. And so many of us, we've got to be open to feedback. We cannot, we'll all understand, you can't get in your feelings when someone is looking to move you forward. And sometimes women, we can get in our feelings and we can get a little petty. Okay, let's just keep it real here. We can get a little petty. And so we have to understand, Chelsea, as you're saying, as we are seeking those coaches, those mentors, those people that are looking to give us feedback to fuel us, that we are open enough and have the emotional intelligence to actually apply the wisdom apply the wisdom. And we're going to be wrapping in the next 5 minutes. And I'm going to ask, as far, I'm going to give you the microphone here, but I'm going to ask that you connect with these amazing women on LinkedIn. I'm going to plug, as Chelsea said, Farah's book, The Color of Emotional Intelligence. Wow. Powerful. And listen, I'm going to be honest, I have not gotten through it all, but I know it is an easy read. I'm flying home. I will have that book finished, and I'm going to be providing some feedback on LinkedIn. So please connect with you too, Chelsea. But this is what it looks like, ladies, right? This is, we support, we cheerlead. But here's the thing also too, we correct. If we see something, I would appreciate if Farah or Chelsea came into my DMs or my text message, Alicia, you may want to check that a little bit, but I know where it's coming from because we've taken the time to build relationship. And so you want to align the value piece. That was so, I just wanted to just high five you and hit emoticons all over the place. That values piece, that will win every time, because if values are misaligned, so are so many other things. So Farah, I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, Chelsea out here, like running for mayor, just dropping all these gems. But yes. it's so, I love what you just said about community, and that value alignment piece is so huge. Because sometimes we are looking for validation. Sometimes we are looking for, just a hype person, because we have not done our own work. And to your point, we can get all up in our feelings, and feelings, I say feelings aren't facts. They're just data, right? So they just move through you, but they highlight something that needs to be paid attention. So if you're having a conversation, or you're, with a certain group of women, and you're recognizing you're being triggered, what's that? Are we taking a moment to practice the pause and assess what that means? What's coming up for you? Have you felt this way before in another scenario? Is this something that you need to work on? Again, this is all EQ work. It's being able to understand, why do I do what I do? Why do I feel what I feel? And when we're in community with the people that we're truly aligned with, to Alicia's point, I understand that the correction comes with love. That if you didn't care about me, you wouldn't correct me, right? Because if we're in a tribe where it's like, I see greater for you, and I see what's your stumbling block. If you can address this, I can totally see the doors opening up for you. And if you aren't teachable, if you aren't, sitting in wisdom, under somebody that you can go, okay, I don't like this bristles me, but where's the lie? You got to stop and ask, but is there a lie? Are they telling me true? Yes. More than likely, I've given them permission. I say, as a therapist, people give me permission to make them uncomfortable, right? Because healing does not come with ease. So if you find the people that you're aligned with, value-wise, then there's going to be a lot of discomfort as you grow. But it's for your good. And that correction, that feedback, is to actually keep you aligned to the direction and path that you're trying to go to. So I think as women, we have to make sure that we're assessing ourselves so that we can understand why our group may not be as great as we would like it to be, in and out of the workplace. So, check your relationships, but also check yourself. What's your role in that circle? If you're struggling, if you're frustrated, it's like, okay, maybe you've outgrown, or maybe this was the right group back when you were 15, but not while you're 35, not when you're trying to go someplace. So I love that values alignment piece, because then that goes back to the boundaries, right? Because our values help create our boundaries. So when we know where we stand on something, we know what we'll accept and what we won't accept. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
I love it, Farah. That was a mic drop. And yes, love it. Loving the comments. That we appreciate you too for joining us. And Chelsea, I'd love for you to leave us with some insights as well, because Farah's was a whole mic drop right there. It's just, I cannot. So first, let me say, I can't wait to watch the replay, okay? Because I'm going to take notes. So Chelsea, love to hear what you want to leave the ladies with today.
I want to leave us with something that I say at the end of every training program that we facilitate at Reimagine Talent. Inclusive and equitable spaces do not just happen. With intention, we create them. So we're saying inclusivity, we're saying belonging, we're using all these words that sound good and are very important. They're not going to just happen. It's going to take mindfulness, alertness, consciousness, and care. And so I would ask you to assess where you are today and where you'd like to be, because that's the beautiful piece about this opportunity, and be a bridge builder to the next generation. Really think about what it means to connect people for purpose. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity to share some insights with you.
Oh, this has been wonderful. Thank you. We want to thank the Women Future Conference for having us. Thank you all for joining us. I'd love to thank my amazing panelists, Chelsea C. Williams and Farah Harris. Please follow on LinkedIn. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you all for joining us. We're so delighted you said yes. And let's just continue the conversation. And as Chelsea and Farah have said, let's utilize our levels of emotional intelligence. Let's create boundaries, and let's close the gap by remaining in action and creating, not just dropping these buzzwords. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a fabulous rest of your week. Until next time, bye-bye.